So one of the topics that's coming up in the news regularly, if you follow the politics stuff right now, is the Democrats are threatening to get rid of the Electoral College, and you hear it, one vote, one person, one vote, and every vote should matter the same, and so very bent out of shape because Hillary won the the popular vote, but lost the one that mattered, which is the Electoral College vote. So this is going to be a brief version. I'm not going and pulling out my research and getting into all of the history of the Electoral College. Let's just go with why does it matter? And oh, by the way, why won't it change? No matter what they're threatening, it isn't going to change. That's not one that should scare us. And comes down to this: we are the United States of America. So, what does that mean? We're a united group, united. Who's united? The states are united. We are a group of individual states. And the states, by the way, from our initial concept, in all other sense, state is what we usually refer to as a country. So we have in Washington, D.C., we have the Department of State. What does the Department of State do? What are they responsible for? Oh, they're responsible for talking to other countries. That's because other countries are states. States are the standalone organizations. They're the standalone political body that are sovereign in their area. They control their space. Okay, so they're a sovereign state. Well, we were a whole group of sovereign states who decided to not be individual countries when we split away from England, which ruled the area. We decided that instead of building one federal government, one federal space, and just become a country, we would become a group of countries on the basis that as part of our republic, we would gather together and say, you know what, we don't all have to be exactly the same. We're very different. And if you go back to the histories, at some point we will talk about the North and the South. Okay, the Civil War, which was fought quite a bit later, all of the grounds for the Civil War were already laying there. And there was very little chance we would create one country. We couldn't because we were radically different. At that time, it was all North and South because we were this very narrow set of countries that ran down the East Coast, 13 of them. And there was huge difference over that North to South space about not just difference, the most stark one, of course, is slavery, but that came from a whole bunch of other things. We were different people. We valued different things. We looked at the world differently. And so the way they built a country was by saying primarily your state is going to be your country. They're going to have the primary of rules and laws that were going to govern your life. That's why you still have state rules. Okay? That's why most of the laws that cover you, the driving laws, for instance, the speed limit in wherever you live is set by your state. It's not set by the federal government. Much of what affects your daily life is controlled by your state, and it should be that way. Okay? We're way too big to try to have a one-size-fit-all system. But we did need some things. If we were going to hold our own against the rest of the world, we needed to do some things together. So we decided we would form all of these individual things into a single body with some very limited things it was going to do. By the way, we've lost that part. Okay? They've decided there are no limits on what the federal government can do. Again, that's why we exist in this group. Okay? But if we're talking about this, we said we're going to have individual controlled places. And basically it's very much like building a club. We said we're going to have a club, and to join our club, you have to agree to the rules of the overall club. And so the states came together to decide how are we going to do it. And we set a series of rules. By the way, we had a previous set of rules. Okay? We had a previous constitution, and we didn't like those rules. And so we decided we would set up a better set for long term. And we spent a lot of time working on it. And we argued over it a huge amount because this was going to establish a set of rules that we now know of as the Constitution. One of the things in there is we created this three-part government. Okay, we said that there's going to be a legislative branch, there's going to be an executive branch, and there's going to be the legal branch. Okay, and we're going to elect two of those. Okay, and so when we did that, we created something that we were actually pretty worried about. We decided we would create one person at the head of the whole thing. But we were really worried about that person becoming a king. We had the most unique thing about our country was that we did not have a king. There was nobody in this country who was born to rule us. There was nobody we decided we're going to follow this person and then they're going to birth the next person or pick the next person. We're going to have this position of president and we're going to pick them. So let's decide how we're going to pick them. Okay? It was very important. They did not choose to make this a direct democracy. We are not direct democracy. We are representative government. We are a representative republic. Okay? A republic, a gathering of other bodies that send representatives off to make decisions. We made that in a bunch of ways. We started with, we maintained most of the power to the state. But we said, if we're going to pick this person over here, how are we going to pick that person? Are we going to pick them just by total vote? One person, one vote? No. We hated that idea. We hated that idea because from the very beginning, there would have only been a couple states that mattered. New York and Virginia. Okay, let them pick everything. No, we're not going to do that. Why? Well, because we're Ohio or what? Ohio didn't exist yet, but we're Georgia. We're not going to let them pick. Okay? Why? Because they don't know us. They're too far away from us. They don't know our life. They don't know what matters to us. And so they had to decide how they're going to do it. The way that it's done is through the Electoral College. And the Electoral College, how many people are there in the Electoral College? How many Electoral College votes are there? See, most people aren't going to know. If you know, okay, you're one of the very, very few. Okay, there is one for each state representative you have and one for each of your senators. So however many representatives your state has, plus each of your senators, there's one for each of those. There are some others. Washington, D.C. gets 3 of them, okay? So they're not either of those things. They don't have senators, they don't have representatives, but they still get to vote for president because they're still in the country. So they get to vote for the national stuff. Washington, D.C., there's a whole nother topic for someday. But this basic idea, it can't go away. If it goes away, most of the states of this country no longer matter for president. None whatsoever. The president would not be elected by the majority of the places in this country. They might be elected by the most people, but they won't be elected by most places, which means no president that ever cares about farming will ever happen again. Why? Because only cities will elect these people. The only people they'll be caring about is New York and Florida and California cities, and because all of the votes that would be required to get elected that way are in these tiny population areas. The President of the United States is not designed to be the representative individually of the people. He's designed to oversee the collection of states. And the collection of states means we've got to pick somebody in a way that's fair if you're in North Dakota, okay? And because otherwise, literally, North Dakota would never matter again. North Dakota, the entire middle of the country, Iowa, Nebraska, none of these places ever matter again. And do they matter to the country? Well, they feed us. I mean, yes, it matters a lot. And so that is how we chose to do it. It's not going away. Why do I say it's not going away? Well, because it would take a constitutional amendment. Okay? Yes, can they put up a constitutional amendment? Sure. If the Democrats have both houses of the legislature and they have the presidency, poof, they can make one. They can write anything they want to. But what does it take to get a constitutional amendment? Okay, it takes 2/3 of the states to agree. That was a really smart thing. Those founding fathers were really smart. That's one of the things you're going to find from me. There's a book that was written about the World War II generation, the greatest generation. They were great. There's no doubt about it. I've got half of my history section over here is World War II, but they weren't the greatest generation. The founding fathers were the greatest generation. I make notes, or I have somebody make notes all the way through here. I should talk about that at some point. But they were really, really smart. And a piece of what they did is they said, okay, after we argue all the way through creating this thing, we're going to make it hard to change. And to change it, we're going to require that you get the people who are likely to be on both sides of the issue to agree to the changes. Because of that, the Electoral College is not going to change. If you tried to change it without that 2/3 vote, which is the only way you would get it through, then America as we know it is over. And people ask me all the time, you think there's going to be a civil war or whatever? And they're surprised if I know. I don't think so. And it's because we don't agree on enough. You have to get enough people organized into the right spaces to have a war about something. You start going, okay, race or whatever. If you're going to have a race war, where? Who's on what? Where are we divided? Are we all everybody picking up sides? We're going to decide, okay, everybody from the Mississippi East. Or, I don't know how that happens. Okay, we might have some violence over it, and we are. But you want to have a war in the country? Find some non-constitutional way to take away the choice of president from 2/3 of the states of America. Okay, now it's the states who are aggrieved. That's how internal wars have happened here in the past, if you can divide it up into states. And yes, it isn't going to happen. So let's not all panic about that one. I'm not saying they're not going to try. I think they're going to try. And I think they're going to think that they could run it as a referendum, and they're going to ask the whole country to vote on whether or not they want to do it. And then more people are going to vote to eliminate the Electoral College than are going to vote against it. And they're going to say, see, we should do it. And I'm hoping what will happen is some places like North Dakota will say, we'll shoot some people if that happens. Because that's the things we fight wars over. We fight wars over blowing out the Constitution. The Constitution gave us a way of doing this, and there's no constitutional way the Electoral College is going away.